I am here with Adam Moskowitz, importer at Columbia Cheese, third generation cheesemonger, and today we are being educated about fondue.
Fondue is so great because it's basically like cheese soup, and who doesn't like cheese soup? It's
Fair.
also a molten cauldron of melted cheese, which if you don't like melted cheese, then what are you doing eating pizza and quesadillas?
And I think the thing that scares a lot of people is like if they don't have the fondue kit, you know, they don't have the special forks, they don't have the bowl. Like,
Don't need it.
what is the myths around like what equipment you need for fondue?
You need, I recommend non-stick pot because that's easier to clean, but you could use a regular pot that you would make soup out of. You just got to soak it more. You need fire, ideally adjustable fire.
You need that portable fire. I mean, if you make fondue and then you bring it out to guests, like how long will it take for it to become not appetizing anymore?
Well, you got to just keep stirring. So that's what makes it, you want to, basically the cheese is trying to break. And so you don't want it oily, so you just keep stirring.
Right.
I often do fondue in the kitchen. So like it's a great starter. Or like this, you could
leave
cook,
it on low.
you could kick it, just leave it on low. You could cook in the kitchen and then take like a sterno and stand. You're basically watching for the bubbles. If there's too much bubbles, it's too hot, you want to turn the flame down.
And let's talk about the cheese selection, because there's classics and then you can go a little crazy. So how do you pick cheese for fondue? Because you don't want to just have one cheese, that's boring.
Sometimes if a cheese is extraordinary, then and in itself is not boring, then I think you could actually rock one cheese. To me, cheese is, you use cheese to build flavor. Right, so the traditional is basically Gruyere Emmental or Morty Morty, which is Gruyere Vacheron Free Bourgeois. I look at it like for the traditionals, the Emmental is like the base for creaminess and svelte, like velvetyness, whereas the Gruyere is there for the salty garlic, nutty, funky punch. Ultimately, what I do when I'm building a fondue is I look for a creamy cheese. I look for a nice, salty, garlicky, leaky cheese, and then I often will also throw in what I call the wild cheese, which kind of just acts like the Vacheron Free Bourgeois and just brings that like complexity note.
Right, and for people who say like, okay, I want to use a good cheese, but I don't want to like melt a great cheese. Like, how do you find that sweet spot of like not wasting like a really high-end cheese, but also not using like a really kind of not great cheese?
I think you should really explore your cheeses. You could go two ways. I think using high-end cheese is not a bad thing to do. Why
just
not?
Like melt your really expensive cheese?
I'm one
Live
of the
dangerously.
Yeah, well, a lot of people when you use wine, they recommend a dry white wine. Right, which is great and it cooks well, and a lot of people say don't cook with really good wine because you'll just burn it off. But my attitude is there's only 1 cup of wine in the dish, so you got to drink the rest of it. And so often I'm like, why not just get a nice bottle of wine? One of the things is you got to use cheese that has moisture in it. So that's another part of it. Some people might use too old a cheese when making a fondue, and that also might be why it breaks. You got to be careful what cheeses you use as well, because some cheeses don't melt as well as others. So generally speaking, you want to be using cheeses that melt well, which is a simple and good question to ask your local cheesemonger, which is, does that cheese melt well or not? For me, the most important thing is to break off of the stereotype of Gruyere and Emmental. And it's more a matter of finding cheese with good moisture that melts well, that is creamy, funky, oniony, garlicky.
All right, so where do we begin?
I got 3 cheeses here. I got, the first is Usi Lucy. It's a Swiss cheese. It's my Emmental note. It's where I'm going for my creaminess. It's where I'm going for my smoothness, my velvetyness. 1655 is my Gruyere note. It's a 15-month Gruyere. It's a perfection Gruyere. This is what kind of like what I'd say holds the Lucy up. And then I bring in some Rongbach. That is a farmstead raw milk cheese from Sweden, which I'm using as my wild note. So then what we do is we take in the bowl.
Perfect.
We start throwing. The ratio is usually a cup of wine to a pound of cheese. Then I want to take note that I use the least amount of Rongbach because that's the wild note.
So that's like more.
You could always add more funk. You can't take back funk, right?
Yeah.
Once you're on the funk train, you're on the funk train. Then what we do is, and then we go to the cornstarch, because what it does is it helps keep the creaminess. To 1 pound, you do 2 tablespoons, and then you mix it up. Do you mind getting your hands a little dirty? Or you're basically trying to cover the shred with the cornstarch. We're on to actually starting to cook. You want to cook?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so the first thing we do is we put on the fire, and we throw in the garlic, because I want to kind of just brown it up a little bit. We got the garlic in now. Now we're going to put our cup of wine, and we want to do is bring it to a subtle boil. Not a crazy boil, but a subtle boil. And then I'm just going to start bringing in the fondue, and we're mixing.
And so you don't put like everything in at once.
We're basically, again, we're melting cheese, but we don't want to break the cheese. You're melting a solid object and trying to get it to meld with a liquid. And so you have to do it delicately and gently. You just got to be patient, man. Once the cheese is all in, then we're going to bring in the kirsch. The wine is really your base. It serves as acidity. For this fondue, I'm going a little traditional. I'm not actually going to use lemon, but I do often recommend lemon when you're making fondue because the acidity of the lemon helps create a creamier, more or less lumpy fondue. The kirsch is the brandy. It's more of like the flavor. It's a tablespoon.
Yeah, and
Okay, and then a little bit of pepper.
So the best part about making the fondue is testing it and
Over-
eating all of it
Right.
before you serve it to anyone.
Exactly, and well, you could just add to the pot. So one cool thing about fondue is it's not really hard to replenish the pot when you mise en place well.
Adam, thank you so much for showing me how to make awesome fondue. I really appreciate it.
Oh my God, thank you. I think everybody needs to do more fondue. It's a fun way to party with friends. Who doesn't like melted cheese?
Cheers. Fondue cheers.
Fondue cheers.